The year is 2149. Earth has turned yellow due to severe environmental degradation and air pollution, and humanity is on the brink of extinction. People live in specially protected buildings to shield themselves from the sun's radiation. One day, Shannon, a police officer, comes home and surprises his family with an orange, a rare fruit in their time. His teenage daughter, Maddie, rushes in to warn them that the police are coming. Although Jim is a cop, he has broken the law, which allows only 2 children per family. Jim and his wife, Elisabeth, have 3, Josh, Maddie, and their youngest, Zoe. In a panic, the family hides Zoe in a secret compartment. When the authorities arrive, they search the house and eventually find her. In a rage, Jim fights back against the officers, leading to his arrest. He is sentenced to 6 years in prison for assault. 2 years later, Elisabeth visits Jim in prison and tells him she has been invited to join Terra Nova, a settlement 85 million years in the past, on prehistoric Earth. She can only bring Josh and Maddie with her because Jim is incarcerated, and Zoe is an illegal 3rd child. However, she reveals that she has found a way to smuggle both Jim and Zoe into the settlement. She hands Jim a laser device to help him escape before they leave. A few days later, Jim escapes from prison, makes his way to the transport facility, and assumes a new identity. He bribes a guard to smuggle Zoe in a large bag and joins the line of people waiting to be transported to Terra Nova. Security is alerted when Jim is spotted sneaking into the transport area, but he manages to reunite with his family and gives Elisabeth the bag containing Zoe. To avoid suspicion, Jim stays behind while the rest of his family travels through the portal. Knowing it's a one-way trip, Jim makes a run for the portal and successfully reaches Terra Nova. Once they arrive, the new recruits are introduced to their leader, Commander Nathaniel Taylor. Taylor allows Jim and Zoe to stay, and Jim is assigned a job in agriculture. Each family is given a home and responsibilities within the colony. The next day, Maddie shows Josh a probe that revealed the colony is on a different time stream, meaning their actions in the past won't affect the future they left behind. Josh later meets Sky, Tasha, Hunter, and Max, other teenagers in the colony. Meanwhile, Maddie befriends a soldier named Mark, who works under Taylor. Josh and his new friends leave the gates of the colony to explore the wilderness. Sky shows him mysterious symbols on rocks and explains that Taylor doesn't want anyone to know about them. Meanwhile, a man arrested for theft escapes custody and attempts to assassinate Taylor. Jim intervenes, saving Taylor's life, and later questions him about the attack. Taylor reveals the existence of the Sixers, a renegade group that arrived on the 6th pilgrimage to Terra Nova. Since then, they have been trying to take over the colony. In recognition of his bravery, Jim is promoted to the security team. Shortly after, Jim, Taylor, and a group of Sixers are caught in a chase involving a pack of slashers, dangerous carnivorous dinosaurs. They manage to escape to the base. The leader of the Sixers, Mira, negotiates with Taylor, asking for the release of her captured man and some medical supplies in exchange for iron ore. Taylor reluctantly agrees. Later, Taylor confides in Elisabeth that he came to Terra Nova with his son, Lucas, who disappeared after a few months. Meanwhile, Josh and his friends find a hidden spot where they make drinks from local fruits. As the Sixers return to their base, they come across the teens' vehicle and decide to steal its battery. Unfortunately, some of them are killed by slashers in the process. Back at Terra Nova, Taylor notices one of the colony's vehicles is missing and reviews footage showing the teens sneaking out. Jim and Elisabeth join the search party. Meanwhile, Josh and his friends discover their vehicle's battery is gone, and they spot the Sixers' vehicle nearby. As they attempt to seek help, they are chased by a slasher. They manage to reach the Sixers' damaged vehicle, where they find one injured Sixer named Drake, who lets them in. Trapped for the night, the group tries to defend themselves as the number of slashers increases. They contact the search party using a radio and find weapons in the vehicle to fend off the dinosaurs. The slashers temporarily retreat, and Tasha, panicking, decides to make a run for it. Despite the group's pleas to stay, she leaves with a gun, only to be attacked by a slasher. She narrowly escapes and is eventually rescued by the search party. The search continues, and the group decides to recharge their vehicle's battery and leave while they still can. But suddenly, a slasher attacks, injuring Hunter. The group is surrounded by the dangerous dinosaurs, and just when hope seems lost, the search party arrives to rescue them. In the chaos, Myra's team also recovers Drake, a wounded Sixer. The group heads back to Terra Nova with injuries, particularly to Hunter and Max. Later, Mira and the Sixers discover the writings on the rocks. Mira reveals that they were written by Commander Nathaniel Taylor's son, Lucas, and they hold the key to unlocking the secrets of Terra Nova. The following night, a supply vehicle is attacked by an unidentified creature, and the men inside are killed. Nathaniel organizes a search party to find them. Meanwhile, Elisabeth reconnects with an old friend, Malcolm, the colony's chief scientist. Nathaniel assigns Jim the task of finding out who has been feeding Mira and the Sixers intel from inside the settlement. After a search, Nathaniel's team finds the bodies of the men, and they bring them back to the settlement. Malcolm and Elisabeth are tasked with determining what killed them, and they discover the men were attacked by something from above during the night. That night, Jim's house is visited by bat-like creatures, the same kind that killed the men. Jim and Josh try to scare them off, but the creatures attack, injuring Jim. After retreating indoors, Jim realizes that these creatures are responsible for the earlier deaths. Malcolm wants to study them further, but Nathaniel refuses to risk his men. Jim also becomes suspicious of Malcolm after learning that he was the one who recommended Elisabeth for Terra Nova, worried because Malcolm and Elisabeth used to date in college. Meanwhile, Josh and Sky are spending more time together, and Josh confides in her about his girlfriend, Kara, whom he had to leave behind. As they talk, the bat-like creatures begin to swarm around the colony's fences, their numbers increasing rapidly. The creatures attack, but fortunately, no one is killed. Using infrared cameras, the settlers see millions of the creatures roosting in nearby trees. Nathaniel realizes that the colony was built near their breeding grounds, and the creatures are returning to nest. Fearing another attack, Nathaniel orders everyone to take shelter indoors. Malcolm theorizes that they can lure the creatures away and develops a chemical with Elisabeth to repel them. Jim and Nathaniel use the chemical to lead the creatures away from the settlement, successfully drawing thousands of them out. By morning, they report that the creatures have moved to the coast, where they will breed and leave the settlement in peace for good. After resolving the crisis, Elisabeth is assigned to a standard field research mission at a remote facility because no one has heard from the previous group that went there. She leaves with Nathaniel, while Jim and Malcolm stay behind. Upon reaching the facility, they find the gate open and cautiously enter. Inside, they find a note warning them not to leave the building. They discover 3 people locked in a chamber, only one of whom is conscious. The woman has lost her memory and is confused about her surroundings. Elisabeth treats her but must figure out what is going on. They find a video recording from one of the crew members, explaining that the facility was exposed to a pathogen, and he must warn others before it spreads. Since Elisabeth, Nathaniel, and the rest of the team have been exposed, they cannot return until they find a cure. Meanwhile, back at Terra Nova, Jim catches a cold from Zoe, who has fallen ill. The next day, Jim asks Lieutenant Alicia Washington, who is in charge while Nathaniel is away, to send a search party after Elisabeth, but she refuses. Desperate, Jim convinces Malcolm to sneak out with him to find them. Meanwhile, Sky introduces Josh to Tom, a shady character who can smuggle people to Terra Nova for a price. Josh, eager to bring his girlfriend Kara from the future, agrees to work for Tom in exchange for arranging her transport. When Jim and Malcolm reach the facility, they discover that Elisabeth has lost 20 years of her memory and no longer remembers Jim but recalls her college days with Malcolm. While Malcolm works with Elisabeth to find a cure, Jim searches for the other survivors. He finds Nathaniel, who has also lost his memory and believes he is still fighting in the future war. Nathaniel attacks Jim but stops short of killing him, as he wants answers about Terra Nova, suspecting it's a secret military operation. Malcolm begins to show symptoms of memory loss and becomes paranoid, hallucinating a dinosaur. Jim knocks him out to protect him and focuses on helping Elisabeth develop a cure. When Jim tells Elisabeth that he is her husband, she starts to wonder why Jim hasn't been affected by the pathogen. Eventually, Elisabeth deduces that Jim's cold is helping him resist the infection, and she creates a vaccine using the antibodies from his cold. Meanwhile, Lucas, Nathaniel Taylor's estranged son, infiltrates Terra Nova and even holds a gun to Mark's head. Thankfully, Alicia Washington incapacitates Lucas, and he is given the cure for the pathogen. With everyone now vaccinated, the pathogen is no longer a threat. Later, Tom, the Sixers' informant inside the settlement, delivers supplies to them. A few nights later, a young girl is found just outside the settlement's perimeter. She is brought in but proves difficult to manage. Elisabeth manages to communicate with her and learns that her name is Leah, her parents are dead, and she has a brother named Sam. Leah is part of the Sixers. Nathaniel wants Leah to stay in the settlement to gather intel on the Sixers, so he and his family let her stay at their house. Alicia and a soldier go to search for Leah's bag but are captured by the Sixers. Mira, the leader of the Sixers, arrives at the settlement gate holding Alicia and the soldier hostage, demanding Leah's return. Nathaniel and Mira negotiate, agreeing to let Leah choose where to stay. Leah ultimately decides to remain with the settlement, rejecting Mira and the Sixers. Nathaniel becomes more desperate to uncover the identity of Myra's informant within Terra Nova. He looks into a list of people who left the settlement that day and becomes suspicious of Robert, a member of the Sixth Pilgrimage who didn't join the Sixers. However, when Nathaniel tries to interrogate Robert, Malcolm intervenes, stating Robert has already been cleared. Meanwhile, Leah skips school and sneaks back to Myra's old hideout, retrieving something hidden in the floor. As she tries to escape, Jim and others catch her and interrogate her about the object. Leah claims she doesn't know what it is but was forced to retrieve it because Mira is holding her brother Sam hostage. Nathaniel decides to lock Leah up until they learn the truth, but Jim believes her story and wants to check on the Sixers. Nathaniel refuses to allow this. Jim later finds a note left by Leah saying she has no choice, which convinces him she's telling the truth. He sneaks out on a bike to the Sixers' camp but is caught in one of their traps. To make things worse, he is attacked by a small dinosaur. The Sixers arrive, chase off the dinosaur, and take Jim to Mira. She explains that she was never going to harm Sam or Leah, but she needed to use them as leverage. Mira also reveals that powerful people from the future want Nathaniel gone, and her reward for helping them is a chance to reunite with her daughter in the future. She hints that both she and Jim might want Nathaniel out of the picture for the sake of their families. Mira then lets Jim go, along with Sam. Jim returns to the settlement, where Sam and Leah are reunited. A family volunteers to take Leah and Sam in. Jim doesn't tell Nathaniel what Mira revealed about the future conspiracies. He hands over the mysterious object Leah retrieved to Malcolm for investigation. The next day, the Terra Nova settlement faces a new problem. Foster, a man sent to repair a nearby communication tower, is killed by a dinosaur. During Foster's autopsy, Elisabeth discovers turkey blood on him, leading Jim to believe Foster was set up to be killed. Nathaniel tasks Jim and Alicia with finding the culprit. During their investigation, they discover a photo of a woman on Foster's dog tag, which also serves as a data drive. Unfortunately, the dinosaur that killed Foster has swallowed the drive, so they must hunt it down. Meanwhile, Zoe is too sick to attend school, so she stays with her mother and becomes fond of a dinosaur egg with a birth defect. After Jim, Nathaniel, and their crew track and kill the dinosaur, they retrieve the tag and learn that the woman in the photo is Rebecca, a married woman who was having an affair with Foster. After interrogating Rebecca's husband, Howard, he confesses to orchestrating Foster's death using the dinosaur. It is Terra Nova's first murder, and Nathaniel must make the difficult decision to banish Howard from the settlement. Meanwhile, Tom takes Josh to meet Mira outside the gates. In exchange for helping Josh bring his girlfriend, Kara, to Terra Nova, Josh agrees to work for Mira. Sky volunteers to go with him. In the morning, a proper military funeral is held for Foster. Later, Elisabeth expresses her concerns to Jim about the fairness of banishing someone, pointing out that they must also consider the possibility of false confessions. The next day, despite her reservations, Nathaniel finalizes the decision, and Howard is banished from the settlement. Jim follows Howard into the woods and confronts him, learning that Howard falsely confessed to protect his wife, Rebecca, whom he loves deeply. Jim sneaks Howard back into Terra Nova, where they confront Rebecca. She admits to the affair but denies killing Foster. She reveals that their relationship ended because of Foster's gambling addiction, which he funded through Tom's bar. Meanwhile, Elisabeth and Malcolm work to save the dinosaur egg Zoe has grown attached to. Jim, Nathaniel, and their men head to Tom's bar, where Jim is surprised to find Josh working for Tom. Jim and Nathaniel detain Tom and search his bar. Tom uses this as an opportunity to escape, but it's a ruse. They use the situation to lure Curran, the real culprit who killed Foster. They had already discovered that Foster owed Curran a lot of money, and Tom was just playing his part. Curran is banished, solving the mystery. That same night, Josh and Sky meet Mira, just as Tom had planned. Mira tells Josh that she will help bring his girlfriend to Terra Nova, but in return, he must help her when she asks. Meanwhile, Elisabeth and Malcolm's efforts pay off as the egg they were incubating successfully hatches. The next day, Jim takes Zoe to the underground digital library, the Eye, where they can explore images and videos from the world they left behind. At the same time, Elisabeth prepares for surgery on Hunter, one of Josh's friends, who has a growing parasite inside him. Maddie secretly goes on a date with Mark, visiting flower fields outside the fence. Malcolm informs Nathaniel that the object they found in Myra's place can only be opened by her DNA, as it's DNA locked. This otherwise perfect day is interrupted when a meteor splits in the atmosphere, triggering an EMP that fries all electronics and sends out a sonic wave causing structural damage. This is particularly bad for Hunter, as Elisabeth now has to perform his surgery without modern tools. Jim and Zoe are also trapped underground, unable to communicate, and Jim hadn't told anyone where they were going because it was meant to be a surprise. Maddie and Mark are stranded as well, with their vehicle and weapons disabled, so they must walk back to the settlement. The settlement's chip fabricator is also damaged by the EMP, leaving them no choice but to ask Tom for help repairing it. Meanwhile, Mira learns the settlement systems are down, so she gathers her men and prepares to attack. As night falls, Maddie and Mark are forced to climb a tree to avoid predators, while Jim sends Zoe through a small tunnel to unlock a door from the other side. Mira leads the Sixers in their assault, using fire to drive a large dinosaur toward the settlement gate. Back at the hospital, Elisabeth orders Sky to pull the parasite from Hunter, but it snaps and begins harming him. Elisabeth urgently sends Sky to Tom to retrieve a critical chip needed for Hunter's treatment. Zoe manages to unlock the door, freeing Jim and her from the underground chamber, but the dinosaur driven by the Sixers is charging toward the settlement gate. They manage to start a fire near the gate to repel it. Nathaniel becomes suspicious, realizing that the Sixers must have used the dinosaur as a distraction to infiltrate the settlement. He and Jim rush to the lab where they had been keeping Myra's mysterious object, but the Sixers are already there. Jim chases the man holding the box, but the Sixer escapes. Tom also intervenes, shooting a Sixer who is about to kill Nathaniel. Elisabeth uses the chip Sky retrieved from Tom to successfully save Hunter. However, Nathaniel is furious, realizing that Myra's men knew exactly where to look for the object, which means there's still a spy within the settlement. Mira hands the object to Nathaniel's son, Lucas, who easily opens it, revealing that it contains complex digital codes and equations. The object, it turns out, belongs to Lucas. The next day, Jim and Nathaniel go fishing, while Elisabeth tells Maddie and Josh that renowned geologist Dr. Ken Horton has returned from a 6-month field study. Mira calls in her favor from Josh, asking him to steal a restricted medication using his mother's access card. Meanwhile, Maddie secures an internship under Dr. Horton, but she becomes suspicious when she notices that his handwriting seems different from before his field study. Josh tries to back out of helping Mira, but she convinces him otherwise by arranging a brief video call with his girlfriend, Kara. This reassures Josh, and he remains committed to the plan. Maddie becomes more suspicious of Horton and compares his signature from a letter sent before his field study with a recent one, noticing the differences. When Horton asks Maddie to return the old letter, her suspicions grow. Later, Nathaniel and Jim witness Horton leaving camp in a hurry. Nathaniel orders Jim to go home while he follows Horton. Meanwhile, Josh steals his mother's access card and has Tom clone it so it won't be traced back to Elisabeth. Nathaniel eventually finds Horton injured and stays with him to protect him through the night. That night, Josh breaks into the hospital, but when the clone card fails to work, he blasts open the locker, injuring himself in the process and successfully stealing the medicine. In the morning, Jim returns to investigate, knowing that since Josh used sonic guns to open the door, whoever stole the medicines will likely be injured. Meanwhile, Nathaniel helps Curran, who is being hunted by a predator. Maddie, suspicious of Ken, waits for him to leave his office and finds the letter she gave him torn in the trash. She begins to suspect that Ken is not who he claims to be but someone who assumed his identity after a face swap. Determined to prove her theory, she runs a DNA test with Malcolm's help. The results confirm her suspicion: Ken is an imposter. However, Ken has been watching her the entire time. Tom, trying to cover his tracks regarding the stolen medicines, frames another man who owed him a debt, planting all the evidence to shift the blame. At night, Nathaniel rescues Curran from the predator and asks him to infiltrate the Sixers to find out who the spy inside Terra Nova is. Nathaniel promises to help Curran return to Terra Nova in exchange for the information. Maddie doesn't give up on her investigation and goes to the Eye, where she learns that Ken's assistant killed him and assumed his identity. When Ken confronts her, Maddie runs away, but Ken takes Zoe hostage. The man Tom framed for the stolen medicines eventually gives him up after interrogation, and Ken lets Zoe go while keeping Maddie. Zoe tells Jim what happened, and thankfully, Jim comes to Maddie's rescue that night. Josh confesses to his father that he was the one who stole the medicines, and Jim sniffs out the truth. The mystery of how Mira communicates with the future remains. Since communication is only possible when the portals are open, Nathaniel suspects Lucas might be involved. The next day, a bug is spotted flying around the settlement and returning to Mira, revealing that it's a spy device. A carnival is approaching, keeping everyone busy, while Nathaniel continues to use intense methods to extract information from Tom. When Jim checks on the progress, Tom drops a hint about a secret buried at the Pilgrim Tree, threatening to reveal everything he knows about Nathaniel. Jim investigates further, eventually digging up a dead body near the tree. After examining the body, Jim learns that the person was murdered. Meanwhile, Mark leads a patrol to an outpost, but they are ambushed by the Sixers. While the kids rehearse a play for the carnival, Maddie discovers that the bug is chipped, leading Nathaniel to realize the Sixers orchestrated the attack. Mark and his team return empty-handed, and Nathaniel releases Tom because the ambush happened while Tom was in custody. At the hospital, Elisabeth discovers that the body at the Pilgrim Tree didn't arrive via official time travel channels, appearing sometime between the second and third pilgrimages. Jim learns from Tom that Nathaniel blamed Lucas for the victim's death, and it was the last time anyone saw Lucas. Malcolm examines the skeleton and insists they inform Nathaniel. When Nathaniel, Jim, Elisabeth, and Malcolm gather, Nathaniel falsely claims the body belongs to a Sixer. Malcolm, meanwhile, finds out how the bug works and plans to track the spy using the insect. During the festival, Jim realizes that the body he found was that of General Philbrick, Nathaniel's superior, who had only one arm, just like the body Jim uncovered. Malcolm releases the dragonfly, which leads them to Jim's house, prompting Nathaniel to arrest him. During interrogation, Nathaniel admits to killing General Philbrick to protect Terra Nova from those who want to exploit it, including his son, Lucas. Nathaniel explains that Lucas was trying to create a two-way portal to allow the future to drain Terra Nova of its resources, leading to their estrangement. Nathaniel apologizes and frees Jim, seeking his support against their mutual enemies. Jim agrees to help, and as the festival continues, Nathaniel addresses the crowd, reaffirming their unity. The next day, Nathaniel discusses the death of Sky's parents with her. 3 years earlier, her parents were killed by a virus that claimed many lives. As Nathaniel prepares for a secret mission, he leaves Jim in charge of the colony's defenses while Alicia is away. Nathaniel investigates the mysterious equations left behind by Lucas but is suddenly confronted by Mira, who holds him at gunpoint. Meanwhile, Jim strengthens the colony's perimeter, ensuring no radio frequencies can be exploited by the Sixers' spy. A soldier detects a flashing light in the jungle, signaling someone inside the settlement. Jim and Mark rush to the construction site and search for the recipient of the signal. They find Sky, who has cut her hand on a mirror she used to reflect the light. She manages to escape, but Jim and Mark find a drop of blood in a jar. Nathaniel, meanwhile, manages to free himself from Mira and capture her after a failed escape attempt. Malcolm, on the other hand, urges Elisabeth to release the dinosaur they hatched, believing it's now big enough to survive in the wild. However, Elisabeth hesitates because Zoe has grown attached to it. Jim's evidence against Skye becomes unusable because he accidentally damaged it while trying to collect it, frustrating his investigation. Skye sneaks into the hospital to treat her hand in secret. Meanwhile, Mira leads Nathaniel through the jungle, blaming him for working with those who seek to exploit the prehistoric world. Mira defends her actions, revealing she's doing it to save her sick daughter. During their confrontation, a snarling creature interrupts them, allowing Nathaniel to free himself and capture Mira. Back in the lab, Jim convinces Malcolm to analyze the blood sample. Meanwhile, Zoe tearfully prepares to release her pet dinosaur into the wild. Skye, meanwhile, joins Josh's work crew but sneaks away to the Sixer camp, confirming that she is the spy, motivated by her need to secure medication for her still-alive mother. Malcolm extracts the blood for testing, while Nathaniel and Mira encounter two dinosaurs and escape by jumping off a waterfall. They bond over their survival, with Nathaniel acknowledging that they could have been a strong team. Skye returns to the lab and sabotages the DNA test with acid to avoid detection. Later, Mark expresses his intentions to marry Jim's daughter, but Jim tells him to wait until she is of age. Jim then learns about the failed DNA test and suspects that a member of the hospital staff may be involved with the spy. Elisabeth narrows down the list of suspects, ruling out the male since the spy is female. Nathaniel and Mira prepare to part ways, with Mira warning that Lucas is close to reversing the portal. Zoe releases her dinosaur, which reunites with its mother. A few days later, Nathaniel and Jim approach the gateway in preparation for the arrival of the 11th pilgrimage. Nathaniel urges Jim to identify the Sixer spy before the new settlers arrive. Jim interviews all the suspects, including Skye, who claims she was with Josh, teaching him chess, when the spy was detected. At home, Maddie's tablet loses power, and Josh explains that power cores are in short supply and they'll have to wait for the next pilgrimage. Skye asks Josh to lie to Jim about their whereabouts, and he agrees, thinking it's harmless. That night, Skye sneaks out to the Sixer camp to visit her sick mother. Lucas, lurking in the shadows, forces Skye to activate a microchip in the eye, threatening her mother's life if she refuses. The next day, Skye activates the chip and gives it to Lucas, who claims he is close to making the time portal bidirectional. At the settlement, Alicia and Jim review footage of Skye sneaking out through a drainage ditch. Jim confronts Josh, who admits to lying. Jim grounds him and informs Nathaniel, who plans to confirm the information with his contact inside the Sixer camp. Later, Nathaniel and Jim set up a staged convoy to bait Skye. When she sneaks out again, they catch her on video. In the jungle, Nathaniel leads the convoy while Jim watches from a ridge with armed soldiers. However, no one interrupts the convoy, leading Jim to suggest that Skye may be a reluctant spy, forced into it because of her mother. Skye encounters a crazed Lucas, who warns her not to return to Terra Nova, as his employers will soon arrive to defeat his father. Devastated, Skye confesses her role as a spy to her mother, who urges her to return to Terra Nova and tell Nathaniel everything. Skye's mother is prepared to die to stop her daughter spying. Skye rushes back to Terra Nova and pleads with Nathaniel for mercy, revealing that the Sixers have her mother and that Lucas has completed his calculations and is heading for the portal. At the portal, Nathaniel's soldiers await Lucas. Lucas activates the portal, releasing a blast of energy that knocks out the soldiers. Nathaniel and Jim find Lucas, who tells them it's too late and steps through the portal to the future. Back at the settlement, Curran brings Skye's mother, Deborah, to the infirmary, where she is treated under Nathaniel's orders. Nathaniel acknowledges that Lucas's hatred stems from the death of his mother, which Nathaniel couldn't prevent. With Lucas poised to return with soldiers from the future, Terra Nova must prepare for the impending threat. In the future, Lucas and Weaver, the man behind the scheme to exploit Terra Nova, prepare a large army to invade the colony. Nathaniel also prepares his forces, concentrating them near the portal. As the portal flickers, people from the 11th pilgrimage arrive, including Josh's girlfriend. Suddenly, a man wearing a bomb comes through and explodes. A wounded Jim wakes up in the infirmary to find Terra Nova devastated, enemy soldiers patrolling the camp, and Mira and Lucas having taken over headquarters. Elisabeth informs Jim that he was unconscious for 3 days, with 26 people dead and Nathaniel missing. Jim finds Josh mourning his girlfriend, Kara, who died in the blast. Jim heads to Tom's bar, where enemy soldiers are drinking. Alicia explains that the soldiers belong to the Phoenix group, sent to strip mine Terra Nova. They need Malcolm to fix a transport device that was damaged by a dinosaur. Jim talks to Malcolm, who is deliberately delaying the repairs as much as he can. Mira and Lucas interrogate Jim, but he feigns deafness and mental instability from the explosion. Later, Mira is ordered to lead an expedition to the Badlands, despite her claim that the area is empty. Meanwhile, Elisabeth discovers coordinates etched on bullets while treating wounds of the Phoenix Group soldiers. This clue is from Nathaniel. Malcolm creates a diversion, allowing Jim to sneak into a truck leaving the settlement. Jim overhears Lucas and Weaver discussing their plan to firebomb the jungle to clear out the dinosaurs. Jim finds Nathaniel and his men and informs them of Lucas's plan. They manage to defuse the bomb before it detonates. When Lucas finds out, he launches missiles at them, but they escape in time. Jim returns with a secure radio for communication. Over the next few days, Nathaniel launches multiple attacks on Lucas's convoys. Lucas grows suspicious that someone is helping Nathaniel from the inside. At the bar, Josh and Lucas get into a fight, and Sky flees to Jim. Jim rushes to the bar, and a fight ensues. Jim and Josh are imprisoned after Lucas finds the radio on Jim, proving he was helping Nathaniel. Later, Lucas releases Josh at Sky's request, but tortures Jim to find out Nathaniel's location. Meanwhile, Elisabeth tricks Weaver into helping her rescue Jim by bluffing that he has been infected with a deadly parasite and will only receive the cure if he cooperates. Weaver sneaks Jim into the infirmary, and Elisabeth sedates Weaver, claiming it's the cure. Jim's family flees with Alicia, who sacrifices herself by setting off an explosion to distract the guards. She is captured and brought before Lucas, who shoots her in the head as Jim watches through binoculars. Jim's family heads to Nathaniel's hideout. Back at the settlement, Mira returns from the Badlands with something special, found at Weaver's request. Jim tells Nathaniel about Alicia's last words, which were to blow up the portal at Hope Plaza to prevent more enemies from coming through. This also means cutting off supplies and power from the future. Jim and Nathaniel agree that they can survive on what they have in Terra Nova and build a new civilization with the people already there. They plan to use the bomb they defused earlier to destroy Hope Plaza. The next day, Nathaniel arrives at Terra Nova with Mark and another man, disguised in Phoenix Group uniforms. Sky approaches Lucas, offering to lead him into an ambush. She brings Lucas to a jungle spot where Nathaniel's men surround him. Meanwhile, Jim hides in a Phoenix truck driven by Mark, who is disguised as a soldier. The disguised soldiers send the cargo through the portal, sneaking Jim back to 2149. Back in Terra Nova, Lucas escapes his bonds and knocks Sky unconscious. Jim hides in the cargo bin as Weaver boasts to wealthy men about his plans. Jim then wakes up a sedated dinosaur, which Weaver intended to show to the wealthy men, and the dinosaur attacks. Jim arms the bomb and escapes. In Terra Nova, Nathaniel intercepts Lucas as he heads toward the portal. Nathaniel knocks Lucas down, and Lucas pleads for mercy. When Nathaniel hugs him out of fatherly love, Lucas stabs him. Before Lucas can stab him again, Sky shoots Lucas and rushes to the wounded Nathaniel. In the future, Jim confronts Weaver, who is about to shoot him but is killed by the dinosaur. Jim sprints toward the portal with the dinosaur in pursuit, and the facility explodes behind them. Jim emerges on the other side of the portal. Sky discovers that Lucas's body is gone, and Jim reunites with Elisabeth. A Phoenix soldier informs Mira that Hope Plaza has been destroyed, trapping them in the past. Mira is devastated, realizing she will never see her daughter again. Everyone returns to the settlement, greeted by liberated citizens, while the remaining Phoenix soldiers head north to the Badlands. That night, Nathaniel and Jim open a cargo bin containing what appears to be an ancient ship's prow from the 18th century. The mystery remains: how did it arrive in the past, and what does the Phoenix Group know about it? As night falls, Jim's family sits outside their house, watching a beautiful meteor shower. Thanks for watching. Until next time, have a nice day.